All right, welcome back. You're watching Standpoint here on Morning Prime. We continue, press with the conversation, looking at the crisis within IEBC right now and the boundaries review. I'm just reading here an article by Katiba Institute. They're saying the Independent Electors and Boundary Commission, of course, will begin a boundary review exercise shortly, so to speak, as expected. That is next month. And this will affect 290 geographical constituencies in the National Assembly and 1,450 county assembly wards, but not the 47 counties, each of which produces a woman county member of the National Assembly, a senator, and a governor. Periodic reviews of boundaries are normal. Population changes. Some communities have higher birth rates than others. Some communities attract incomers, and those incomers have left somewhere else. It is common to require the adjustment after censuses. Our law requires boundary adjustment must use enumerated national census figures, meaning actual figures reported by the census, not projections made after census. The IEBC plans to use the results of course, 2019 census, for which the Bureau of Statistics is already preparing, or it had begun by then, but when it was going into publication. And why are boundaries important? County politicians may have views about whether certain communities are within the county because of their votes, and county government might want certain towns to be within their boundaries because of their possible contribution to rates. Sometimes communities themselves may want to be with our people in the same constituency. And this is what we are looking at because there's a crisis that is ongoing. So this also brings to bear some questions. If we're going to use the 2019 census, we still have challenges also in courts regarding some figures of some of the constituencies that has not been determined. Will we still be having this review with these challenges in court as well? We can talk about the Somali community that went to challenge their census in 2019, where it was upping to around 2 million. And right now they're saying, no, we're actually more than 2 million in this country. So that is still in the courts as well. But let's just begin from what we're facing, and we'll pick with you, Dr. Makalemuli.
You know, from what the earlier statements by Senator Mungatana, I think what is happening is that, to me, I just look at it as the issue is the political process. You know, the Constitution is very clear that every Kenyan has a right to representation. So there are those Kenyans who are no longer being represented because we have either lost a member of parliament or a member of the county assembly. On the basis of that, then I think any right-thinking Kenyan would want to see a situation where those Kenyans are given the opportunity to have an elected representative. Now, what is happening is because of our issues after the last election, where we had demonstrations and we got to a political process and agreed that it's important we suspend that thing and look at the whole, because one of the issues which was contentious was the issue of the electoral reforms. People were feeling like this issue of the electoral reforms was a major issue and needed to be discussed. So as a result of that, then, we decided to come up with this team, the National Dialogue team. Now, what the National Dialogue team has done, they have said that if we proceed as per the law, we are likely to get into more problems. So what is the way out? The way out is to disband the earlier selection committee, the IEBC selection committee, the one which was supposed to identify the commissioners, and then start afresh. And I think this issue didn't have any, the two teams, both the Kenya Kwanza team and the Azimio team, they all agreed that that is the way forward. You see, now with that consensus, I think that's what the party leader is saying, or Raila Odinga is saying, that with that consensus, now if you open it and say, let's go back to the original selection committee, then obviously you're causing problems. And what we're saying is, while the judge, the magistrate could be right, it's actually right in terms of what is
in the Constitution, yes.
In the Constitution. But now, if you go that way, then politically, you will trigger another problem.
There's another political crisis.
And you see now the issue is, IEBC is independent electoral. So it's actually, IEBC is politics. I think IBC is politics. So if you ask about matters, IBC are more political than legal, as Senator Mukatana is saying. So if you take matters, if you put IBC and say, do we need to address IBC matters politically or legally? Every right thing Kenya will say it's better you do them politically. Because if you get it right politically, then you unite the country and you'll be able to move forward without any issues. But you know, as you said earlier, the Constitution says we must review our borders either between the 10th year or our maximum, the last 12th year. Between 10, is it? Between 8 and 12. Now, the 12th year will be actually getting over by March.
It's March, yeah.
So we are saying constitutionally we'll be getting to a constitutional crisis. And I think what we need to do as members of parliament, when we go back to parliament, this must be agenda number one. Either I don't know whether the law allows, I'm not a lawyer, but we're very good legal minds here. I don't know whether the law allows parliament possibly to extend the time by some time so that we get that process through. I don't know whether the law allows us, could we extend this by possibly 1 year so that we say we allow the country 1 year to get this process, even though now we are already 12 years, are we allowed to extend it for a year to get this through? Because what I'll call just my...
What do you mean extended by a year?
I mean parliament, that's what I want the lawyers...
The tenure of parliament?
No, that's what I'm asking. No, not parliament.
But
the
period, the period of...
Oh, the period, okay,
The law says you can only do
strictly,
between 8 and
10
12.
years.
And 12 years.
Yes.
Now we are already doing the 12th year, which is actually lapsing by March. Now we're asking, I want the legal minds to help us. And do we have a provision where now we can say, we can, Parliament can, the way we do motions, we can do a motion.
But why should we? I think this has been your own making.
But it's obvious with the bow, we cannot do battle reviews between today and March 1st.
Yeah, we can't.
Won't.
In fact, we hold you beholden actually to this, because you are the people who are actually, plummeting this country into this crisis in the first place.
We agree, because in an article, we couldn't do anything, because you imagine if you could do the demonstrations, obviously we would not have done it. Now that we agreed, we get to a team to sort out the matters, and the team seems to have given us a roadmap. We're asking ourselves now, what do we do? Because something must be done. I can tell you for sure, come March 4th or 1st, you will have no borders refilled. So to me, I think that's the issue.
Dr. Nyika, I mean, the writing was on the wall. People said this National Dialogue Committee is unconstitutional. Even the tea that we were taking, we had also, we had the majority leader who said, when questions were being raised regarding some of those provisions, he said those were given by, the non-governmental organizations, the good wishers at the end of the day. And people were stoutly against the National Dialogue Committee because it was unconstitutional. But you went full steam ahead to push it for it.
Let me say, nothing amazes me these days. Let me tell you, because if you're a religious person, you would say, God must be looking at us and laughing, because the writing was on the wall. If you are an atheist, you say, we must look really silly because the facts were all available. Two things that actually will bedevil us. All these things we say, whether we go to housing, whether we go to health, whether we go to education, whether we go to only two things will come out, actually three. And if you look at those, we will run the country well. One, justice is superior to law.
Correct.
Justice is superior to law. In 1960, you would go to jail for going to Norfolk Hotel and taking tea. For the simple reason because you are black.
You're black.
It was legal. You would go to court and court would take you. But when the society then says, this is what we want, this is what is just, then it changes. Similarly, in this particular case, the Constitution is the supreme law. But how have we meddled with the justice that the supreme law was protecting? We go to an election, we have a crisis. People are dying. Then we say, we are going to talk. We talk. We get the peace. While we are talking, it gives us the peace. Now, we agree on something. Now, when we agree on something, we now have to look very quickly on our law to make what we have agreed on be in tandem with the law. Now, we seem to be changing position. So point number 2, sincerity, leadership is utmost. If you don't want it, don't agree. To me, it is even better to continue the war than to agree on something that you know you will not do. Had the president said at that time, nothing about NDC, we don't want it. But the opposition was given the feeling that if we talk, we will talk. Now we agree, we talk. We stop all the things. Now when it has stopped, it looks like a legal trick. Now we then say, no. This thing is not according to the law. You know, so we look insincere. A leader at top level carries the full responsibility of sincerity. Number 2 may become the opposition that they go to it. So had we been sincere about NDC, we should have said, the writing is on the wall. We have agreed. One of the things we have agreed in this NDC committee is that we are going to relook at IEBC. Move fast. And both opposition leadership and government leadership would have moved with speed. But there was no sincerity. We thought we were stopping a small thing. Now we are landed with it.
All right.
Yeah. So now the whole thing, the whole scenario. Now let me make it even complex, because sometimes we look at things and we leave it. When we have a scenario, then before that, where we have created doubt about the court. We say we are not going to follow the law. We are not going to follow the decision of the justice. Then we say we are going to call the Chief Justice and have a word with the Chief Justice. Now, once you call the Chief Justice and you have a discussion, another thing is not related to this even debate, is people now start to doubt, is the judicial system now working in the context of the discussion they want, or are they now totally guided by law? So you have created a doubt. So now, this judge, in the letter of the law, is right. But in the context of the society and justice, he isn't. So the way forward is basically the leadership, and I think the president will take the lead on this. And if they agreed, the leadership agreed, the president and the opposition agreed that NDC is a good thing, it is time to say, what do we do with it?
All right. So now,
why I'm telling you that is we are taking short-term measures with the leadership of 50 million people. We shouldn't do that. If we don't want it, we don't want it. We don't go for it. If there was no if we didn't have an NDC, this judge's decision would fly. But with NDC, we created an environment, and now we want to talk and solve things. We can't now go back and run to the law.
But we created an NDC on an environment which is illegal, which is unconstitutional.
You know, even when...
So you can't justify that now we need to look with the difference.
Even when an illegal situation has come, the purpose of leadership is always to seek justice. In the circumstances we have now, what would be the way forward? And so when we said, okay, NDC, we have looked at it.
Okay, let me look
forward. To me, it is justice is superior to law. Sincerity is utmost. Don't take short-term measures when you are leading a country.
Justice is superior to the law. This is where we talk about the law and the spirit of a law, which is very amorphous. Seriously, yeah? It seems to me that the law will be a moving target because it wants to fit someone's whims at the end of the day.
Always.
No, yeah. It cannot be a moving target.
That's why we are parliament. If we didn't have parliament, the law, it is.
It is, by the way.
It is.
And I must comment, Dr. Nyikal this morning, he has actually done us justice in what Law 101 defines. He's talked about justice being superior to the law. That is what
So
the theory of law would say.
Which
the law as it ought to be
actually
is measured by its prescriptive nature. It prescribes, it ought to be. But the law as is measured by the descriptive. It describes what the law is. That is what Dr. Nyikala told us this morning.
So the law is always descriptive.
The law is it's both descriptive and prescriptive. It prescribes. That is the law as it ought to be. It describes. That is the law as it is.
So this is the law, which is the prescriptive is the law itself, and the descriptive is the spirit.
No, it's the other way around.
The spirit is the other way around.
Yes.
So the spirit is the descriptive.
The spirit is the prescriptive.
Is a prescriptive.
Yes.
And the law itself.
The law is the descriptive. Because here we are dealing with a report that has come from the National Dialogue Committee. That was arrived at following a round-table engagement when the Kenya Kwanza government and the opposition sat down and said, look, let's look at Kenya, the bigger picture. Let's have a conversation. Remember, I was in the first team of the bipartisan talks, and then we transitioned into the second, which now led to this particular report that we are discussing this morning. The judge equally has been invited to make a decision on Banisa constituency where they are entitled to have representation in parliament. They lost their member of parliament. And she has said in her judgment, this particular National Dialogue Committee has taken away the entitlements of the people of Banisa to have representation, and I must direct that IEBC should immediately be reconstituted for purposes of achieving what the Constitution provides for the people of Banisa and other constituents, not constituents, but wards that do not have representatives as of now. She has equally said that the constitution of IEBC is provided for in law, and that is true. Remember, for us to arrive at getting this panel, we had to amend the IEBC Act, the relevant section that speaks about whose representatives must be put in the selection panel. And that is what the law is. As we speak right now, the law is speaking straight into the panel of the IEBC. They are lawfully in office, they are legally in office, and they are right to continue in implementation of the decision of justice. On the other hand now, we are saying the reason why we invited ourselves to a round table was because we needed to have a consensus. Remember, there was 8 itemized issues. Among them was electoral justice. The one item that we are talking about now was the electoral justice, where electoral justice had 3 limbs. The reconstitution of the IEBC, there was also the delimitation of the boundaries, and lastly there was the audit of the 2022 election. Now, those 3 things, of course, the NAD committee gave a position on what's to be done. They said that IEBC reconstitution was agreed to expand the membership of the panel from the current 7 to 9. What does that mean? That means we can only do that by going back to Parliament and amend the law, because we cannot also say we are reconstituting it without amending the law. It is a process that is provided for in law, because we've got to go back and amend the IEBC Act so that we expand that panel from 7 to 9. 2 is a question about the delimitation of boundaries, which is a big question. It's a big animal. It's an elephant. The Constitution says it is the mandate of the IEBC to let me try to
review the boundaries.
Verbatim. Yes, Article 89 of the Constitution. Actually, 89(2) says that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission shall review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. But any review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election of members of Parliament. Last year, in the year 2022, IEBC, in a report that was dealing with the intention to review the boundaries, gave the population quota from the current, I think the census of 2019, and they enhanced from 133,000 per constituency to 164. The basis for that is we're looking at 47 million Kenyans. We're looking at the constitution that says we can only have 290 constituencies.
such that even if we were to say it is the mandate of the IEBC to deal with the delimitation of boundaries, they'll still be guided by this same document, the Constitution, to make sure that we have retained 290 constituencies. Now, the talk of we will lose some constituencies is nor here nor there, because we will still have got 290 constituencies. What will happen is boundaries might be changed so that if in a county we have got, let's say 5 constituencies, like my county now, Bomet, for instance, we have as at now 5 constituencies. The Constitution says we can change names and realign the boundaries, but still retain 290 constituencies across the country.
So realign means, because what I'm given to understand, if they are lesser than what the Constitution really requires in terms of votes, or not really votes, but population,
Yes.
then that is actually rife for collapsing that particular constituency and creating others, isn't it?
Yes. So as long as we are within the 290 constituencies. That is true.
As long as it's within
Yes,
there.
yes.
And so there is this bugbear and fear that some of the constituents' funds will be lost.
Definitely.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Also representation
Yes,
will be
yes,
lost. So
yes.
in terms of running for that particular seat, that is
Now,
another story.
The law as
how that
is what you are saying. The law as it ought to be will answer the question by Dr. Nyikal and my colleague Senator Mongatana, because he's saying, I cannot fathom us as a county losing one constituency in Tana River. But the IEBC is saying these boundaries and these constituencies and these representations are based on the population quota. 47 million Kenyans against a quota of 166 people, 160,000 people per constituency for purposes of distribution of resources, because the bigger picture is resources and what my colleague here, Nikal, talked about, the geographical representation and expansion. So it is a murky situation. It is something that we must also be ready to deal with it, because it's a crisis.
This is not the first time we've done the boundaries review, isn't it? This will be the first time.
Senator is saying
With this particular constitution, yes, that's what I'm saying. Can we?
The other 3 factors which are listed in the Constitution, just if you go to, I think that is 89, if you go to the next page, I think 5 of that, it says geographical features and urban centers, community of interest, historical, economic and cultural ties, and means of communication, which means even as we look at the population, that's why you see some might not meet the population target, but might be also be allowed on the basis of the other factors. There's also below that 6 says 40% for cities, and then 30%. So also, you could also below the figure, the 164, 40% for cities or 30% for. So there are many factors will be considered.
But when he says that the commission, this is 89 subsection 3, shall review the number, names, and boundaries of wards periodically. Is periodically this the 12th year? That is the periodically that we're talking about. So I was saying we've not done this. We've not done it with this current constitution, but it has been done before with the previous. What are some of the salient points we can learn from before that will cross over maybe to this current? And before I even go there, I think when we were talking about the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 ward, this 1 vote, yeah, this issue of boundaries also was there. When I remember Sakaja also came up with a prime solution. I think in the Senate, you can also just give us a refresher on this. I cannot really remember exactly what it was. But I remember when that particular issue of the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote raised the issues of boundaries reviews as well within the wards. There has been calls to expand, to have more wards, and yeah, especially also with the BBI. Briefly.
For me, the issue of one man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. It should read 1 man, 1 vote, 1 kilometer.
1 kilometer.
1 kilometer, not the population, not 1 man, but it should mean 1 kilometer, 1 shilling. Because in our county, we have expansive land, and that land needs development. development needs, we must have resources pumped to that area. Now, if you say that you are going to measure us with Nairobi, you are definitely disadvantaging us. So Tana River County, together with other counties, will refuse any formula that will say that we should rely on population alone. The population alone will totally disadvantage us. So we are saying 1 kilometer, not 1 man. It should be 1 kilometer, because in fact, Kenyans should be thankful to us. We have accommodated a lot of other, tribes and
But it sounds to me like
No,
1 man, 1 shilling is what this constitution is really talking about.
No. There are
Let's say
all these other
if
factors. Geographical expansion is part of the factors that must be considered. And so this brings up to that question that Mheshimiwa Dr. Makali has asked. What should the lawyers say about the issue? Because this is talking about 8 to 12, Article 89 is talking about 8 to 12 years, the periodical review. According to me, the Constitution itself has defined how it can be reviewed. And Article 256 and 257, there are only 2 ways of amending the Constitution. Article 256 and 257, they say you can amend the Constitution by 1, popular initiative, then by 2, through Parliament. But the one of through Parliament has restrictions. Like you cannot touch on the territory of Kenya. You can't just go to Parliament, bring a bill to say Kenya has expanded into Somalia or Kenya's land has been removed. It has to go to a referendum. You cannot, amend the term of the president through a parliamentary vote. It has to go to a... So the one of Parliament is very restricted. If you look at all those provisions, like territory, like presidential, like the structure of government and so on, it is restrictive. But the one of through popular initiative is very wide. You can amend the Constitution to say a lot. So, for me, the way forward, this article, Article 89, Sub-Article B, Sub-Article 2 must be amended to at least say that, provided that the first review shall be within 20 years or within 15 years. So just to add those words, so that we buy ourselves time for the review to happen, to give us time to do all these things that we need to do.
we omit the shall, and we put...
No,
Shall and put a limit.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Extend it.
you extend by saying whatever they have said, but provided that the first review. So after this first review of within 15 years, or actually we should say 17 years, so that we add 5 more years to the 12 years that are supposed to end in March. We add 5 more years, so that we say the first review should be within 17 years. And then after that, we can go back to the 12-year period. And I think that we can do within Parliament. That one doesn't need to go to a referendum.
Okay.
How do you get it passed through Parliament? Negotiations, which means the opposition and the government side, we sit and agree that we need time to agree on how we shall review these boundaries, you see? So for me, the way forward is, again, going back to the negotiations and the national dialogue. Because as it stands now, the judge is right, but it is not, within the political context, it does not serve us well. So that we will say that it is the law that is for man, it is not man for law. So we should have a way in which we can agree as Parliament, that is National Assembly, and ourselves in the Senate, that we are going to review and extend the period. Because there's no way it can be done by March. As it is, practically it's not possible. So we have to start the process.
So we need a special sitting on this.
True.
True. To thrash out this particular. True. Because we can see 65 members of Parliament who will be declared unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
Right?
And people can go to court.
And people can go to court and challenge and say 65 members of Parliament, they do not have a right to, be given any salaries from this date.
Yeah,
from this particular date, when the matters really lapse
Let me
as
just
fast.
tell you, he's brought out something very, very important.
No, before yes, but I wanted to ask before you even go there.
Ask and I'll answer.
Yes, what is so wrong with the Nelson Makanda's selection panel that Azimio had were taking special umbrage with this particular selection panel that brought all this issue? Because now the court says that panel should proceed. What was so wrong with that particular panel? What was because
I think
we wanted to know
the
what, because
process,
we've never understood why the
maybe
Nelson
my colleague
Makanda's
will also chip in, but I think if you remember what happened even in Parliament, those amendments, we did some amendments to I think the Election Act, and it appeared like the amendments were actually being pushed through Parliament by force. It's like where we are saying the majority must have it, and I remember it was very controversial in Parliament, and some members were not happy the way it was done. So all along, it cast some doubts, the process. And you know, we say the outcome of anything is as good as the process. So that's why you see even us who are in Azimio, it's like we're not very comfortable with the way that thing was being done, and more so the body which are identifying who sits where, who becomes a commissioner. That panel, the way it was constituted, I think that people are feeling it could be having some biasness in terms of the end product. And that's why actually it became a matter in the National Committee for discussion. But maybe...
It is exactly the same thing. It comes to my issue that I was saying, sincerity. You know, it has come to me that actually if you have a majority, you actually need to be more careful than the other, because you can pass things, and if you are not sincere, then the reality catches up with you. It's the same thing that when we are actually that we elect people who are not representative, and therefore some parties would actually have a disadvantage or disadvantage. And therefore the IBC as constituted them was not acceptable to all because of the process. Now, having said that, the thing comes when you later on agree to discuss it in the NDC. Now you have opened the Pandora's box because you have now agreed to discuss it. Now you can't go back. And then you get caught up, and Honorable Mkatana said something, you can do this, you do not need to go to a referendum. No, but then you get caught up with something which the current majority does not offer. You will need 2/3 to pass it. If it's a constitutional thing in Parliament, it will be hard, even with this majority now, to get that 2/3.
So we need dialogue.
So you, again, it brings you back to dialogue. And let me tell you, I said something here and you asked whether law is a moving target. Law is a moving target. Justice is the only one that is stagnant. Even the change of population changes the concept of justice, and therefore the law. For example, I'll give you an example. If you are a man and you're polygamous, let me use that example, and you have two wives, and you said, my land will be divided according to the wives I have. If you marry a third wife, that changes. So justice was there when you had two. Now, when you make 3 wives, the law, what will bring justice, must change.
Even when the first wife has only 1 child and the other one has 7.
Now, justice now looks different. So that is why, and that's why we have Parliament Debal. If the law was stagnant as done, you don't need Parliament. You only do it once and you go. But because justice is always changing. Now, what is happening? Constituencies that were now threatened with extinction, if we now go back and find that they have now more population, the growth of population have shifted justice to their side. So that is why we are saying, one, we must be sincere when we are doing the law, because justice keeps looking at us and either smiling or laughing at us or frowning.
All right.
Yeah. So in this, it can be done. But again, if we don't, it will take us back to NDC, whatever we do.
You're forced to go there.
We are forced to go there
All right, so
because of the
that
two-third requirement in the Constitution.
So that is part of a band-aid solution that we need, because as it is right now, this will be a festering wound that needs to be cured very quickly.
Yes.
You're on recess. I think you resume next week.
Yes.
Right, next week. So that this has not been itemized as one of the key ticket issues that will be on the floor of the House. I don't know if you are intimately familiar with the paper order in the House.
Initially,
Is it?
Initially, the plan was, even as we went for our recess, initially the plan was we were to be called for a special sitting to discuss this national
Because it was NDC.
So that by the time we resume the House, we'll have passed that report, and then we can get the implementation phase. But I don't know what games are being played behind the scenes.
So what was it, to discuss the recommendation or the extension of NDC?
To discuss and pass the report.
And pass the report.
So that by the time we came to the House, it's implementation. But you see now, we've not even passed the report, which means by the time we get to the House, this will be one of the items to be discussed, passed, and then we start implementation.
But this item now is a skunk.
But let me
How will you be discussing a skunk and smelling and it's a dead on arrival in the first place?
To just chip in so that we also don't make it look like Parliament also can't do anything or cannot undo some of the things. You asked the question about what is fundamentally wrong with the IEBC selection panel. And there is nothing wrong with it. The issue here is about the political climate, the situation of the politics of the day.
The mistrust.
Because what we had prior to the amendment to the IEBC Act was a 7-member selection panel provided for by law, that is under the first schedule of the Constitution. These 7 members comprised of 2 men and 2 women nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission, 1 representative by the Law Society of Kenya, and 2 by the religious organizations in this country. That was the law then. What happened is that Senator Okiya Omtata went to court, and what he sought in court was to ask the court, according to him, it was very unfair to have Parliamentary Service Commission nominating 4. And he had very valid arguments, and the court agreed with him and said that the act should be amended so that we can spread the representation of the IEBC selection panel to represent more stakeholder groups. And the court now agreed with part of the proposal that he had made to say, instead of having Parliamentary Service Commission nominating 4, they should nominate 2. We also now said, because that was one of his major arguments, political parties, IEBC, and also the electoral system is a political process. So political parties must be given a table in the selection panel. And the court agreed with him and said, then there must be a representative of the political parties liaison group. And in the amendment to the act now, which led to the current selection panel, there was a representative from the political parties liaison group, which is also a team that has elected their representation under the Political Parties Act. So we had representatives from the Parliamentary Service Commission, from the Political Parties Liaison Group, from the religious group, from LSK, and also from Public Service Commission. And this is now the law as it is right now. The National Dialogue Committee report has made recommendation, which is now what will most likely be the first item of our possible to accommodate all, but something that all of us can do. And they have enhanced the numbers from 7 to 9.
Right.
Once we are back in power.
I'm losing your mic, and you have a very important point. Let me just get it sorted out, and then you can actually pick up. Don't lose your track of thought. Yeah. I think you've put it very, very clearly as far as with the genesis of where all this began. So just hold on to that. Let's continue with the Honorable Mngatano on this. Where we are at, I was just raising the question that are we facing also a skunk that has to be debated, something which has been declared unconstitutional, yet you go full steam ahead as the members of parliament to debate it and look at the recommendations and maybe to pass it or to pass it not. Are we also caught in another, a dilemma again with a document that has been declared unconstitutional?
You mean the national dialogue has not been declared unconstitutional. I think what you mean is that the judge has already said that what is there is correct and should proceed. So I think you're asking...
No.
Yeah.
But we knew from the beginning the NDC was unconstitutional, was it not?
The NDC...
As it stands, can you say it is constitutional?
No, we have passed a motion to allow it. We have passed a motion to allow it to operation. That's why even the payments
But
and whatever
when was the passing of the parliament for the motion? Was when this NDC was already constituted, and people were asking, under what legality or legal framework was the NDC?
The legal...
that
issue was raised. I agree with you.
Yes.
But then the way it was sanitized, let me use the word
This sanitization, yes, the dry cleaning that you did. This dry cleaning is what brings all these problems in the first
You
place.
see, the dry cleaning that we did, the sanitization, was through a motion. And that motion allowed them, in fact, to make the dialogue and to make recommendations. In fact, they didn't finish within time. They even came for an extension.
An extension, I agree.
So there is a framework, because Kenya, as National Assembly and as Senate, we have agreed that they should operate. You see, so there's a framework and there's justification for them drawing from the consolidated fund the amounts they had allocated themselves, although they were a bit excessive, from my opinion. They were a bit excessive.
Yeah,
but
the sitting,
But because of the responsibility also, no, we can't close our eyes on that. It was a bit excessive.
Yes.
But we sanitized
in the days of actually claiming a refund.
we can say that there is a framework because we sanitized the process. The difficulty will be there's a judgment now, you know, from the High Court.
That's what I'm saying.
From the Constitutional Court that is saying what is there must proceed. So the only way you can deal with that one now, the only way you can deal with that one is to make a constitutional amendment. Then with a new constitutional amendment, then whatever the constitutional position was then is not relevant to what is now. Because when the constitutional amendment will be done, it will cover. The judge will not have an issue. But if we go without amending, we will have a problem, as you're calling it a skunk.
But this is a huge problem.
Let me come
because
to this.
What we're trying to say is we are disbanding all this selection panel.
Yes.
We have to again now interview this particular new selection panel. It has to be vetted by Parliament, which requires another sitting, before the president also assents to or gives them a go-ahead at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That cannot happen within 1 month.
No. It can actually.
But
where there's goodwill, you know.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
As you were saying,
so you'll be stretched maybe to have...
No, what will happen? If we get consensus, both sides of the divide, that is Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, this thing can even be done in 2 weeks, I can tell you for sure. We have actually passed bills in the House in a day or two.
Correct.
So long as there's no, you know, the issue becomes where there's conflict.
Where you
but,
come again...
But where you have agreed that this is the best option for the country, and you want them to push the process that we unlock this challenge we are facing, it can be passed within a very short time. And that's why, to me, the fact that we are not called for this special sitting was where we got the thing wrong. Because if we were called, in a day or two we would have passed this report.
Indeed.
And I remember in one of our meetings as mayor, we had agreed it would be passed as it is, with no amendment, basically, because we wanted to unlock the process. And if there are any things to be discussed, we could discuss them later in our PG. I'm sure even in their PG, they must have agreed the same. So it meant the majority leader will bring this thing, he will move it, the minority leader will second it, and a few members will make comments, and then we will have it out of our way so that we can start implementation. And this was for the sake of the country. We are not saying there could be no challenge in the report. There could be areas where we say we would have improved this, but we said for the sake of the country. Yeah. And the issues you are raising, which are very pertinent, you know, the issues you are raising are really, that's why you see at times you're putting us into a corner and we are saying we agree with you. Because the issues we are raising are very important for this country. So we are saying, let this report come to the House. With both sides of the divide agreeing, we'll actually get the report through us, and then we can kickstart some of these processes, identification of the selection panel, which with that goodwill of now the whole House, a lot of those other subsequent processes will also pass very fast.
We could even shorten
Right,
so that
yes.
there
let
are
me just
only
say
two
one
Just a
people
moment.
here
Allow me to
added.
go back to,
Yes, yeah.
to
Instead of that,
Hillary
the whole thing
so that he
again.
can actually finish his comments finally.
Thank you, Dibal. I was trying to lay the foundation of where we are and why it is not all lost, especially when we have a consensusly built report based on the National Dialogue Committee. Because one of the major issues of discussion was the electoral justice, and within the electoral justice system was the reconstitution of the IEBC, and now the selection panel story came out. And I was saying that it is a product of a decision of the court where Senator Okiya Omtata went to court and challenged the provisions of the first schedule of the Elections Act, where it provides for who are the members to sit in the selection panel. And in that decision, it is that decision that led to the amendments to the Act, giving us the current 7-member selection panel that is in place, which now has since been proposed to be enhanced by the report of the National Dialogue Committee from 7 to 9. The 7 comprised membership from the Parliamentary Service Commission, the Law Society of Kenya, the interreligious groups, and the Parliamentary Service Commission, LSK, and interreligious groups. 2 women, 2 men, and LSK 1 and 2 interreligious groups. We amended the law to provide for inclusion of membership from the political parties liaison committee, and they actually elected one of their own, and who is a member of the current selection panel. Now, that 7-member committee or panel is what was challenged in the disquiet that came about when this conversation began. And the National Dialogue Committee has proposed that instead of 7, we make it 9. And their justification is because of the presentation that was brought by the players within the political spheres, and 2, their wisdom also in, accepting the fact that political parties are very crucial players in the IEBC. Remember, for every one of us here to be in parliament, they must have been sponsored by a political party. So they said, look, we must have an enhanced representation of political parties within the selection panel of IEBC. The almost IPPG story. And that is now where we are, because once we get back to parliament, once we are back in session, I believe this will be one of the most critical items to be placed in the order paper for the parliament to adopt that report and for the system to begin, running in order to make sure that we make the necessary statutory amendments to accommodate the implementation of this decision. Because this is, as I said, a product of dialogue, consensus, and recommendation in building the comfort that every country desires. And above all, it is not only the only item that was discussed. It's not only the electoral justice system that was discussed. Remember, we had also on the truth agenda rule, we had also issues to do with the checks and balances. We had also what the ODM alleged as mutilation of political parties or interference of political parties, among so many other things. More importantly, the issue on the cost of living. Though some, like the cost of living, cannot be something that we can deal with it in the constitution or in the statutes. It is an item that was discussed, and appropriate recommendations were given, which ought to be adopted by Parliament, and appropriate recommendations for action can also be done by the houses.
Right.
Dr. I just want to bring one thing that I think is important. This brings in the issue of the supremacy of Parliament. When we find ourselves in some kind of crisis, whether it's just legal or constitutional, there's only one body that we can go to. So that it calls on us parliamentarians and our leaders in parties also, that there are times that actually Parliament must be allowed to operate as freely as possible so that they can make decisions that are good to the country. Because we always ignore the technical reality, and therefore those things come in. One of the things is the 2/3 gender rule. And I've said this many times. The two-thirds gender rule is a mathematical problem which we are trying to solve politically, and it will never go. It is the same concept we have with the one man, one vote. And Honorable Mungatana was saying, now add 1 mile.
1 kilometer.
Again, 1 kilometer. Yeah, add 1 kilometer. Again, we are ignoring the reality that the expanse of a constituency is as important as the number of people there. And then we must get a point where we say, as legal people, as political people, we have made this decision. Now let it be done technically. Like that one of looking at what factors to look at. What is put here, give it to technical people, they'll tell you with this. Even when we were doing this, they had to call mathematicians to actually get this. They didn't even take the advice of the mathematicians. The two-thirds gender rule, the only thing that is not working, we are afraid of a large parliament. Because if you were not afraid of a large parliament, all we would have done was to go and nominate after the election to get to the number of two-thirds, like we did with the county assemblies. So this reality and the supremacy of parliament is key when we have a problem.
Right, my music is up, due for a station break right now, taking up to 8 o'clock on the nose. But I'm inclined to wonder, if at all you had a special sitting before you went for recess, and this matter and the report had been discussed, debated and passed, will the ruling of the court had made any difference on that particular, all that will have been a matter that has been done and dusted, right? Maybe that's you need to answer on the other.
Necessary.
It would not be
Because